My guest today is Dana Aronson. Dana is a trained clinical herbalist who takes joy in community based, hands on learning. She focuses her studies on bioregional plants from the Pacific Northwest and intertwines them into her small practice and teachings. Dana's passions show up as setting up mobile first aid clinics, working with folks around addiction and harm reduction, as well as teaching. Dana believes in offering accessible herbal medicine and digestible herbal information so that people can feel empowered around their health. Her company, Wildkin Botanicals, was a creation that was intended to reweave our relations with plants, to remind us that nature and humans are kin. It is a reminder that plants can empower and heal us. Just dive in. Dana, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany, for having me.
Absolutely. I upfront want to say how we know each other. You are one of my teachers, my main teacher in my herbalism program that I started, of course, in the fall. And I've always enjoyed your attitude around learning and sharing what you know about the plant world and your flexibility and your compassion and your thoughtfulness. And it's been a wonderful experience to dive in with someone who is not just knowledgeable, but really cares about the human side of this whole process, as you know, caring about students and thinking about the world with compassion and sensitivity. So thank you for being you, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks. Yeah, that's kind to say. You're a stellar student in so many ways. So it's cool that we can kind of bridge this gap and be in a different kind of space than outside of kind of class or school. So that's also exciting.
Yes. I thought that you would be wonderful to speak to. I mean, you are easy to speak to in general, but I know through your work as an herbalist, as a clinician with your practice, you work with all kinds of people dealing with all kinds of challenges, and probably from just basic health issues. And as I read in your bio, you know, people dealing with addiction or struggling with taking care of themselves in the best way possible. So I was just curious why this work for you, and why do you have such a strong dedication to working with people, helping them through their troubles, their challenges, their complicated lives, which all of us have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think every herbalist or plant person kind of has like an initial story of how they got into herbalism. I was not raised as with herbs or, quote unquote, natural healing or alternative healing outside of the modern medical system. I was very much like an antibiotic kid and that's no shame to my parents. They were just doing the best that they could and what they knew. And so I didn't grow up with that as like an intuitive means at that point. And I ended up getting a job at an herb shop when I was like 22 years old. And I got hired and I was dealing with some things, within myself. And because of this herb job, my first mentor, Naomi Nash, she sent me home with all of these different herbs and tinctures and capsules and loose leaf teas. And she was like, this is your homework. Just use them and like sit with them and hang out with them and kind of just see what goes on. And I found out just over time of working there and using these herbs day after day and seeing something change within myself, both mentally and physically. And then also just experiencing people that were coming into our shop over and over, and then their stories of like, wow, this skullcap tea really did XYZ for me, or like, oh, I love this licorice root because of X, Y, and Z. And it was, there was kind of like this aha moment of like, whoa, I think this actually works. Like, I think that there's something to this. And so that was kind of my introduction, I would say, to herbal medicine and the shifts that could occur within that. And, I think just over time and working in that herb shop and then finding Berkeley Herbal Center and going into their low cost clinic and seeing an herbalist myself, and just really, I think the two pairings of like just seeing what I was seeing in the herb shop, and then also at Berkeley Herbal Center, that was called Ohlone Herbal Center back then, and seeing an herbalist about just like the space that was held there around what I was saying and the acknowledgement of what I was going through. And it was a 2-hour session, which was like unbelievable. There was so much was able to, I was able to go over so much, and it was really cool just being able to dissect little things within, my health journey, and having someone listen and offer insight and ideas. And so then that, at the end of all that inspired me of like, wow, this is actually a path that I want to go down, that I want to take seriously, that, I think I just wanted to change the way we see healthcare, because I think a lot of us, look at modern healthcare as like the only way to do things. And, there's many, many different ways to do it. Yeah.
I can so appreciate what you're saying. I mean, your personal journey, and then wanting to share with other people the power of herbalism, of, plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you do it in a very grounded way. I know that that's how you, at least as a teacher, always seem to want to describe things. Let me make this as practical, as relatable, as grounded as possible, so that I imagine you do that so that as many people as possible can sort of, connect with the ideas and the practices around plant medicine. And also what I heard you saying in your personal journey of opening up to a new healing modality, a new way of looking at taking care of yourself, was that you had time with your clinician, the person you were working with initially. They gave you time. They got to know you, not just hear your list of ailments. And I can imagine for a lot of people that is missing in their experience with medicine, with the medical system. While it has, wonderful opportunities to get like data, to do lab work, to get, emergency care. I think a lot of people do, at least in the States, I hear a lot of people talking about how they just don't get enough time with their practitioner. And so that's also what I heard you saying. Like there is this, for you, that the holistic approach, and to really understanding, in your case, your practitioner was understanding you and taking the time. That seems invaluable. I mean, that to me, that in and of itself seems like part of the healing process.
It is.
In addition to, the medicine.
Yeah.
The physical, literal medicine.
Right. Right. I think just being in that space and having someone confirm my own experience based on what I was saying, and like being in my body and like, in my reality, and not being dismissed, or not being, not looking at me like a checkbox, like, oh, well, you check these 3 things, so therefore you must have XYZ, or you must be experiencing XYZ. Yeah, I felt like, we know our bodies the best. And so, now I'm kind of flipped, where I am a practitioner now, and I do see clients, and, I want people to be able to really tap in and understand what's going on in their bodies. And I know that's difficult sometimes, or maybe people aren't as like trained to do so. And that can be, their own journey in itself, but really trying to empower people to like listen to the body, and to be confident in what the body is telling someone. Because at the end of the day, like, you're going to know what's going on in your body best. I can like hypothesize and try and like kind of work things out with you, in person or vocally, and just kind of try to run some things around to see, what best defines kind of what you're experiencing. But at the end of the day, you know best.
Yeah, that's a much more empowering place for a client, for a quote unquote patient to walk And I think it also, I know personally, when I've gone to practitioners who are more holistic,
Hmm.
whatever, so many different kinds, whether it's an acupuncturist, whether it's a naturopath, so on and so forth, they will ask me questions in detail that I don't always get when I go to maybe my, just regular primary care medical doctor. If I say I have a pain or this has been bothering me, they'll ask me, okay, well, when does it bother you? So when you do this, does it bother you? And
Hmm.
I had to learn over the years, like, oh, I have to pay, like, I really have to pay attention. I just can't show up and say, I have this pain, tell me what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
really to uncover what's going on, it really does require a lot more questions. And that as the patient or as the person coming for assistance,
Hmm.
that means you've got to be more in tune. You've got to be a bit in tune with your body. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's just maybe sometimes physically it's too painful or too uncomfortable. We just don't want to even deal with it. So we just sort
Hmm.
of say, like, it's too painful, it's too uncomfortable. I'll deal with it for a while. And then maybe it gets to a point where I just can't deal with it. So
Hmm.
now I'll go to the doctor. But I think sometimes there are habits that I know I formed many years ago where it was just like, okay, I don't feel well. I'm just going to tell somebody I don't feel well. But
Yeah.
now over the more recent years, I've had to become, like you said, much more involved because I'm living with my body. I'm walking around with it all day or sitting with it all day. I have the best sense of at least what I'm experiencing,
Yeah.
and can describe it. But even the articulation, I've worked with people in my own practice, just
Hmm.
like helping people like find the adjectives can be
Right.
tricky. Can
Right.
be really tricky.
Yeah.
And that really is such a personal process of
Yeah.
like opening up and being vulnerable, but also I think getting in touch.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's one way we as like herbalists or quote unquote alternative practitioners kind of push that boundary a little bit, because I think because of the modern medical system and the short amount of time you get with a doctor, it can be very kind of funneled down to like, oh, you have pain. What's the scale of your pain? Oh, here's a prescription for XYZ. And I think a lot of us, and I've been in the situation too, so it's not there's no judgment or shame around it. It's just like really looking to someone to like I've like looked at doctors to tell me what's going on, when in reality I know what's going on. And right, maybe I don't have the language for it yet, but I know, our body knows. And so once you kind of jog that muscle to like kind of what you said, tap in a little bit more, find the language, we can take like accountability for like what's going on in our bodies, and understand like exactly, instead of just using a symptomatic based kind of practice, which a lot the modern medical system is based in, which has a lot of wonderful qualities to it in acute settings. But when we're talking about preventative medicine, or excuse me, preventative care, not medicine, preventative care, it's like, well, what do we think is causing your pain? Do we think it's inflammation? Do we think it's an injury? Maybe it's food related? We're trying to just kind of like unpack these things where it's like, yes, we want to like we want to support your pain so it doesn't get in the way of your day and your mental health. And we all got to live in this society, but then going deeper of like, okay, well, what is causing this pain? Is it an allergy? Is it inflammation? Is it sports or things like that, where then we can look at more of a preventative care with like supporting more of a long-term kind of care plan for pain, and also pair that with acute support for pain.
Yes. It's a different approach. I mean, there are different additional qualities that you have to
Mm-hmm.
bring as a practitioner to the process of working with people. And also, when I hear you talking, I can't help, Dana, but think about people who are, maybe they are dealing with something physical and there's such a heavy emotional, mental component connected to that, which can be very complex. But it makes me think about, for people who are struggling with health, it could be a long-term chronic issue. It could be a short-term issue. I think sometimes there is, and maybe you see this differently, but there can sometimes be shame around feeling like something is not just wrong, but like what did I do? Like, what did I do? Or why is this happening to me? Why am I not as vibrant or not as healthy as the next person? I mean, everybody's got different circumstances. Sometimes people are obviously born with, conditions and illnesses that stay with them. But I mean, just having issues or challenges with our bodies, however minor or however major, I know from personal experience, it can bring up shame in so many different ways. But I just wonder, in your work, how you see people struggling with shame and what is it that what's at the root of, I mean, it's different for everybody, but is there a common denominator in a lot of cases? It's kind of at the root of why people feel bad about themselves, about their bodies, about their health, or maybe, their struggles. Is there something that's universal, or is it, and if not, what are some of the examples maybe that you've seen with people working with them?
Yeah, I think we are, I would say, like, in the society that we live in, specifically, at least here in the US, I've never lived outside of the US before. We are very much trained to want to be productive members of society, we're very defined in our doing, in our accomplishments. And so when there is health ailments, whether that is physical, emotional, mental, whether that is something that you were born with or something that has acquired over time, I think that kind of punctures the narrative of, like, how can I be most productive in this society? And if I need to take breaks, or if I need to take a rest day, if I need to, call in sick because I literally can't move because, let's say, pain, it makes, I think in general, it kind of questions, like, our ability to be active members, of society, like, in this very doing culture. And so, outside of just, like, the feeling of pain, for an example, or the feeling of not having the ability to maybe walk as easily, there's definitely other things that occur there emotionally, and physically and spiritually. But I think I see a lot of the overarching be kind of this indoctrination that we've all had from growing up in the United States of, like, being a busybody, doing all the things, being active, being accomplished, whatever that means. And, sometimes we're like, everybody is so different. They could be different in their bodies. They could be different in the way they grew up. They could be different culturally, ethnically, like, all of these. We are so dynamic as people. So to try and fit in this one box of, like, work 8 hours a day, take a half an hour lunch, take 2 15-minute breaks, go home, wake up, do it again, support your family. If that makes you happy, right on, like, keep doing it. But a lot of people, it's really hard to fit in that way. And, we try our best. And so on top of that, when there's ailments involved, it makes us question if we're as productive as we should be. Yeah. And I think that definitely is an overarching theme. I also find when I work with people who either in recovery or actively using substances, I think there is just again, a societal shame of, if someone is using substances, like, you don't care about yourself, you are living off the government, or you're just, free floating, trying to live off whoever you can. You're a liar, you're a cheater, all of these kind of things that our society has implemented. in this way of like viewing substance use. And while some of that can be true, not all of that is true. And again, that's going to be very different depending on the person. And so again, I think that is another societal shame that we carry because of that. And I think that, in the realm of addiction or addictive patterning, that can be really hard to break out of, and there is definitely shame that is held because of that.
It's so cool. I appreciate your distinction. There's shame that we feel personally because, of our perception of what it means to be a good person, to be a productive person, to be a successful person, prosperous, so on and so forth. But then this other aspect of shame that's actually society is fostering and perpetuating toward people who are dealing with specific challenges that, that been deemed just so negative, so bad, and have such a strong stigma around it. That's interesting. That's an important distinction, and that both exist, it's not all just purely personal shame that people are experiencing. And right. That is a powerful energy in the world, because it's already hard enough to overcome, even just, saying I've got to accept that I have this health issue or this condition, and I've got to show up, and I'm learning about it. I want to get better. And now I've got to show up to try to help myself work through it or overcome it or heal. That's already challenging in and of itself, having the willpower, the motivation, the drive, and maybe even like that kind of personal confidence that you can, and the support, trusting that you're going to have support around you to walk that journey. And then I'm thinking on top of that, if the struggle also includes or is something that is related to addiction or something that is just a really, really challenging struggle to work through. And then you've got, society who's shunning you. It's like, gosh, that just makes it just that much harder. And so it just comes back to this idea of support to me, like, the willingness to, maybe in some cases it's not about willingness. Maybe somebody is just in such a dire situation that they're not even seeking help, but somebody is having to assist them because they're just, they've passed out or they've overdosed in some cases. And so it's just at that point where the assistance is sort of placed upon them. But I think even if you are a person and I haven't had to struggle with substance or chemical addiction. I've definitely had other addictions like food, and sugar in particular, in the past. Oh boy. I mean, it's all relative. I understand, but in my own way, it was like going to be a problem for my health. So, but I just think, gosh, like it's just, it's a matter of what does it take to move forward? And I guess that's what I'm curious about. What are the qualities you've experienced or you've witnessed in people, or you've understood that what does it take to move forward, whether it is, addiction or substance, or just a chronic health issue that is keeping someone from thriving and from really living in their lives fully? Like what are those qualities that you've noticed that are kind of necessary?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think having faith is really important. And I don't talk about faith as like believing in a God or a religion. If that is your faith, great. But just the word faith to me is just really knowing that there is some sort of hope still, like some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, some sort of coming out the other side, even if it's like the smallest little glimpse of the light. I think if we lose faith or lose that belief that like something can get better, we maybe, things might not get better. I think we I think it's really important to just really try and believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, I've been in situations where, yeah, it's hard to see that kind of future. But I think once we lose hope, we really lose that fire to like push us forward into maybe like healing ourselves, or maybe trying to rid pain, or maybe trying to overcome grief, or whatever the case may be. I also think always remembering that we have choice as like sovereign humans. Like, we have choice to say yes or no. We have choice to not deal with something one day and stay in bed and pull the covers up over our head, and that's okay. And then also knowing that we have the choice not to do that. Again, neither is good nor bad. It just is. And so I think this is also like kind of ties into like looking for a doctor to like give you all the answers to a health condition or ailment of some sort. Like, we also have to understand that we have choice to move forward in our healing, in our recovery, in our relationships, in the way we experience grief, in the way, it could be as small as like our interactions at the grocery store with like the cashier. Like, we always have choice to show up in the ways that we want to show up. And I think at the end of the day, it's a practice. We're not going to be perfect at it every day. We're going to say F it sometimes and just be like, I'm staying in the house and eating this cupcake and hanging out by myself. I'm not going to work on my inflammation today. I can't, I just don't have space for it today. And that's okay. But again, just realizing like I am making that choice to do that. And that's okay. And so like remembering our power in that, remembering and really like having confidence in that. And that acquires, that takes time. And it's not as easy as it sounds. But I think we eventually can all get there,
So encouraging. Yes. And I think that also taking those first steps to face a challenge, face a problem. I mean, sometimes it's an emergency and you don't really take a step. It just kind of comes to you. But
right.
If it's not that sort of situation, then just even like making an appointment to meet with somebody, taking those steps to acknowledge, okay, something's not right here.
Yeah.
Or I just feel so awful. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
I need to address it. That does take some courage and some like you said, accountability.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's scary, right? Sometimes there's unknowns. Like, okay, you can tell I've got pain. I've got this. Maybe you don't sense it's anything that's terminal, but you just know, okay, this isn't cool. This isn't cool. This isn't fun. I need to deal with it. And then I know there are times when I'm thinking of a lot of like female health. There's just some things that you're like, I don't know. I'm saying but I'm really thinking the voice of, of many people dealing with their female bodies. Like, I don't know what's going on and I'm scared to find out. I'm scared, even though I don't want there to be health issues. I don't want anything to take over my life and anything, too bad to manifest that I can't roll back. But I think also that must speak to and I know you and I have had a brief conversation about this, that the way the healthcare system has, and research and, the model has mostly been in the past, and maybe it's changing now, the male body that's been utilized for research and then education comes off of that. But it's like, well, there can be, so many different challenges and issues that females are dealing with and because I think around the culture around the feminine is not healthy, we're not there yet. And so there's just so much that's been hidden and pushed down and kept from seeing the light and just kind of, honoring, so that it can be scary when you might have issues or you might not, but you know that, okay, I need to get something addressed, or I need to at least go do my annuals, do these kinds of things. And you're like, what am I going to find out? You know, I don't want to find anything negative. And I think that, you know, is a whole thing unto itself, but I guess I'm a female, so I'm speaking from my experience, but also the many women I know and care about who, have had so much fear around their bodies, whether there may not be anything obviously wrong, but there's just the culture around like, I don't want to find out. I'm too scared.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can speak to that, but that seems to be, that weighs heavy, I think, on a lot of people.